Okay, today is Zion Adar, the birthday and the passing of Moshe Rabbeinu Olav Shalom, and he is our teacher. He is the one who gives the path, opens the pathway for all the blessings that come down here, and
Uh-huh.
we want the pathways to be open, especially for refuahs, for people who need refuah shlema. Who I like.
Um, also, I have two yard sites tonight.
Go for it.
My mother, Hannah Bas Avram Yaakov, as is her yard site, and my father is Menachem Mendel Ben Aryeh Leib.
Wow. Neshama Zalhavan Aliyah and Kerub Yeshua's Bekorav Ha'oretz.
Amen. Thank you. Oh,
Refuahs?
Shmuel ben Devar Leah, Shmuel ben Rarav, Hillel ben Hilo, Baruch Yehuda ben Yehudis. My husband is going to be in 770. Is going to find out how these boys are doing. Okay.
Good.
Yehudis Golda Basilis, Hana, Chaim Yaakov Zed Metzara, Yosef Yosak ben Lior, Shoshana Bas Hana, Gary Roberts, son of George, Yaakov Shaul ben Hana Miriam, Yehudit Gila Bas Rachalea.
Refuah Shlema Bekorav Mamash.
Amen.
Okay. Also, Aaron ben Achinom, Chaya, Shaul, Yisrael, Eliyahu ben Ita, Sarah bat Razel, Moshe Chaim ben Devor, Gela, Sabrina Celestine, daughter of George Leo, Sarah bat Razel, Yisrael ben Yam ben Leah Gittel, Yisrael ben Inbal Esther, Simcha bat Susan, Isabor ben Mariasha, and Yisrael ben Leah Esther.
Refuah Shlema Bekorav Mamash.
Amen.
Tuvia ben Avram, Yair ben Adela, Mordechai Yehuda ben Chana, Devor Leah bas Ruth Ahuva Liba, Rivka Mina bas Chaya Esther.
And Shalom Dovber ben Bela Rachel.
Refuah Shlema Bekorev. Today, Zion Adar, the birthday of Moshe Rabbeinu. So the Alter Rebbe, it is imperative that every Jew know that he is an emissary of the Master of all, charged with implementing, wherever he may be, God's will and intention in creating the universe, which is, namely, to illuminate the world with the light of Torah and Avodah. This is done through observing practical mitzvahs and implanting in oneself fine character traits. It would be wonderful if a person woke up in the morning before thinking about all the stuff in front of him and the work he has to do, that he thinks about or she thinks about this first. The reason I'm being allowed to wake up is in order to illuminate the world, etc., etc. Okay. Tanya, yes. Tanya. Lessons in Tanya, top of page 414. And of course, we're doing Shabbos today and Shabbos 7 and 8 today. And in Likutei Moharan, Shabbos is near the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines up from the bottom of page. Mem. Yeah. This is the avodah of a person every day, b'simcha rabba. And what were we talking about? Remember, we defined the tshuva yesterday, interesting, is to return to the house of your father. In other words, to separate oneself from the minimally distractions of this world, and to do what basically the Yom Yom said. Wake up to the reason why you were created and return to that purpose and that first principle of why you were created in the first place. And to do that, that's how we defined Shuva yesterday, to return to the house of your father, and to do that b'simcha rabba, with great joy. And this is the simchas hanefesh. And what is this great joy? This is the joy of the soul, b'tzeisa mehaguf, from coming out from the captivity of the corporality, is that the right word? Physicality, per se, of the body, amit oyev, which can bring one into very negative behaviors, v'shova el beis aviho, and return it to the house of your father, Kinaura, the way you were in your youth. And we could go, I don't know how far back we want to go up. The youth also is, plain pshat is when you were young, before you had any taste of anything else except that you were just alive. But of course, your youth goes way back to when you were a youth in the brain of Hashem, and when you were merged as a chelek elakah. But that's a drush. So to return your soul, and return to the awareness of your soul, never being separated from Hashem, return to that awareness, b'shasa Torah, in the time that you're learning, v'avoida, and avoida, which is, of course, avoida shebalev, that's tefillah. Maimon Razalers, the sages have said, there's kol yomo b'teshuva. A person should be all of his days, and meaning also all of his moments, b'teshuva, always coming back to returning to the place of origin, which is your place in Kedusha, in holiness. And there's no greater simcha than this, like the going out of exile and shivya and captivity. That's what it's like. Kamashal ben melech, like the metaphor of the prince of the king, the son of the king, that he was in captivity, and being literally ground in a house of imprisonment. Turn the page. And was thrown onto and despicably brought into the filth, the ashpa, the pit of filth. And he goes out. Imagine the joy of the prince of the king, the son of the king, coming out from such a place, which we have to Rebbe describe with some fairly strong words. And he goes out free and returns El Beis Aviv HaMelech, and returns to the house of the king. Imagine that joy. And even though, now he's talking about us Beinanim, even though we haven't transformed the negativity, right? The body is still standing in that place. As is written in the Zohar, the Nikra Mishka de Chivya, that place which we called earlier the ashpa, the dung heap, etc. The Zohar calls the skin of the snake. We're still in it. We are in that place. But that place is not going to be our prison. As we're going to see, as we see many, many times, it's going to be an opportunity to struggle and overcome with it and to elicit the light that comes from it. But it's called, meanwhile, before that, it's called the skin of the snake. And it's an interesting mashal, because what is it? As the snake sheds the skin. So we may not transform it, but we can shed it. We can return from that confines of being in the confines of the skin of the snake. And why is he calling it the skin of the snake? Because we haven't transformed it. We're Beinanim. We haven't transformed it, the animal soul. And nepach l'teiv, we haven't transformed it yet to good, the Yekol B'Kedusha, so that the nefesh of Bahamis is actually included in Kedusha. We haven't done that. This is the avoid of hachna, of subjugation. Nevertheless, even though we haven't transformed it, there's a beauty in the eye of the soul, to be rejoiced with rejoicing, and more than the joy of the feelings of the body, to return and realize the relative value, increased value, precious value of the soul and the nefesh elokis over the nefesh bahamis, so that the negativity and the natural drawing down of the animal soul doesn't get mixed in or levalvel or confuse you and distort you and move you away from the simchas nefesh, from the joy of the soul, which could be, you could get distracted by that, by the drawings down of the body. The running, fleeing, freeing oneself from the drag down of the body to its course, in its course and ways in which it becomes, God forbid, a snakeskin or a pit of darkness. So there's no greater joy than this. Bebechinas Yitzias Mitzrayim. This is literally Mitzrayim. There's no greater joy than coming out of the Mitzrayim, which is bound confines, limitations. But the simple meaning is Yitzias Mitzrayim, right? Going out of Egypt. But Egypt is Mitzrayim. There's no greater joy than coming out of those constraints. Shenemar, as it says, when we went out of Egypt, Yiborach ha'am. We said that when we went out of Egypt, we fled. And the Alter Rebbe asks an interesting question: why did we flee? Why all the running? The Paro agreed to let us out, right? If we had said that, we did say, send us out. Paro was so, at this rate, remember, 10 plagues, right? One after another. Finally, he was so sick and tired of these plagues and the damage that was done, he sent us out. So why are we running? We're running really away from a worldview. We're running away from the Egyptian worldview, which we had adopted even in a state of slavery. There are many, we know that many stayed in Egypt. And when we got out in the desert, we saw this totally, right? We complained, and we said we longed for the relative stability of going back to Egypt, where at least there was food and drink, even though we were physically and spiritually enslaved. So it's that physical and particularly the spiritual enslavement within ourselves that we're running away from. Because the evil in the soul of the Jewish people was still there and is strong in the left side of the heart. Because that impurity had not left us until Matan Torah. So that's why we're running. Interesting, but we're not running from Paroi and his army. We're running from the internalization of the Egyptian worldview within us. And so our whole effort in running away, this is the running part of going out of Egypt, running out of our of limitations, of the confinements of the dragged down animal soul. So this was our whole efforts, and our whole desire was to go to take our godly soul out of that galus, on the Sitr Achra, which was the tumas of Mitzrayim, which was the impurity of Egypt, and to cling to Hashem. That's what we were running away from and toward, which is another definition of tshuva, returning to our godly source and running toward it. Because you can see, as it's written, Hashem uzi umaosi umanoisi. Hashem is my strength, he's my fortress, he's my refuge, b'yom sora, in the time of my pains or difficulty. Sora also means narrow straits, tsar, narrow straits, the narrow straits of being confined and bound, and by the drag down of the skin of the snake. It goes on and says, he is my refuge, etc., etc. Misgabi menoise. He is my high tower, and he is my refuge. And again, he is a refuge to me. And therefore, in the future, when, as the Rambam says also, when Hashem will cause to pass away the spirit of impurity from the earth, it's written, I will flee and will no longer go and be bound by that. Because Hashem is standing and going in front of me. And in order to get to this place, to get into this level, this category, literally this level of tshuva, excuse me, the Yosef says, with a great power, the Yosef Ozim, with a great strength, and from the depths of one's heart, and to get to a place where the simcha, the joy of the soul, is more powerfully added to and aggrandized, and get to this great light of Simcha. How Yosiva Liba, a person should put upon his heart, Das v'tavuna, on his mind, his understanding, his das and his understanding, and take comfort from this sorrow and from his distress. Layman, to say the following. This is what he's giving this advice now, how to arouse the feeling of desire and then ability and power to flee from, right, and free oneself from the drag down. So to say, and now, as we said above, hey emes, yes, it's true. Yes, that what he said, what is yes, it's true, that I am my animal soul. Remember in the Beinani, back to that, Neshama Shanusati Bi, the godly soul which you gave into me, which we say every morning. And the Alter Rebbe told us the Bi is the animal, because the animal comes first. We're alive, we have an animus before we have the infusion of the godly soul. So in truth, that's true. However, Ani lo yasisi atzmi, but I didn't make myself. God made me this way. He made it that the animal should have priority, meaning priority in time, and therefore initially priority in strengths over the godly soul. He made it this way. I didn't do this to myself. And why did Hashem do such a thing? To cause to descend a part of his own light, which fills and encompasses all worlds, and everything in front of that light and in front of him is considered like nothing. Why did he take that light and enclose it in the skin of the snake? The tipa surucha, and then this rotten drop, the seminal drop, which is just a little drop. Isn't it because, and this is what the thinking that one is supposed to be, and this is the advice, think like this. You find yourself in, God would forbid, in the captivity of the animal soul. You find it's a big struggle. And we mean the animal soul in torrid sins. We also mean depression, agony, any pain, any negativity. You find yourself in that. And this is something that Hashem puts us in. He gives us the strength. He makes the animal soul the first priority. So you have to think, why did he do this? So we say, it must be because that he wants that this descent should be and bring about and is for the necessity of an elevation. Lahalis laHashem kol nefesh Yunus. He's given me this animal soul to elevate the entire life force of the animal soul, abahemus, the animal life force, shemeklippus neiga, which comes from the light klippa, v'cholavusheha, and all of her garments, the garments of the thought, speech, and action of the animal soul. As he says, this is thought, speech, and action of the animal soul. He wants us to take all that animus, all that animation, all that power of the animal and invest it in thought, speech, and action of Torah. Because of Lekamin, as we'll talk about later in chapters 36 and 37, when we speak about the Inyan Halaw, the elevation of the animal, all of which, of course, we're speaking about in the last two, this week's and last week's Parsha in the Torah, right? All about the animal and the elevation of the animal in the Mishkan. So Zu Be'arichas, excuse me. Yeah, so as is spoken about, the elevation of this in length in other places, in later places. How this elevation of the animal soul is the whole purpose of the animal soul and all of the physicality and intellectuality and all those other alodies that are not Kedusha, to elevate them all to Kedusha. And this is the whole purpose of our creation, as we said in today's Hayom Yom. If that's the truth, if this is true, then this should be my only, I will do only this, And this will be my entire struggle, my entire effort. Kol yemei chaldi, in all the days of my life, the kol bahen, to put my entirety into this subjugation and elevation of the animal, because the animal has this great power, the animal power, and utilize and free that great power from its captivity in the negativity to its freedom and redemption and its gullus in kedusha. So this will be what I'm devoted to all the days of my life. My chai ruchi v'nafshe, all of my life force, my spirit and my soul. Kamashikosev, as is written, a pasuk, it's written a pasuk in Tilim, Elecho Hashem nafshi esa, I will lift up my soul to you, Hashem. Tahanul, and meaning what? Lekashe machshavti v'diburi machshavti v'diburi yisborach. To tie, make a knot between my thoughts and my speech and in his speech and in his thoughts and his speech, to tie my thoughts and speech into his thoughts and speech. May he be blessed. And what are these thoughts and speeches that we tie ourselves into? How do we create that relationship of our garments, thought and speech, and of course then action with his garments? What are his garments? His garments are the halachas. This is what he spoke. The halachas, harucha lefana, which are set out in front of us, lefanenu, and which are set out in front of us, and v'chein, of course, the ma'aseh hamitzvahs. I will tie myself to those things. I'm going to take my animal, all my animus, my power of physical strength, my thought, speech, and action, all of which come from the animal soul, and I'm going to strap those to the chariot of God's Torah and his mitzvahs, thought, speech, and action. Torah meshivas nefesh, and that's why the Torah is called that which restores the soul. L'makoira, to her original source, Bishorsha, and her original root. And on this it says, Bekude Hashem Yeshorim Mesamche Lev, that the statutes, the mitzvahs of Hashem are straight, upright, and they bring joy to the heart. That's it. Comments, questions?
Well, when you think about joy of escape, you look at some of the statements of the passages that they emit tremendous gratitude, and they see the miracles, and they know that Hashem is with them. And
yes.
Wow, it's so palpable, it's so real, and
yes. So, not with that knowledge and awareness, God should spare us from anything similar to it, because we understand and we know, we've seen it on their faces. We don't need it to be applied to us. Let's just realize.
Learn from the extent of the gratitude.
Yeah, I'm just saying, learn from it, but at the same time, God spare us those. God
just the world.
Yeah. God should spare everyone that kind of pain. Thank you. Anybody else? I mean, it all boils down to just know who you really are, which is, the neshama. Initially, there's the animal soul, but that animal soul itself is designed with a divine purpose to be a tool for the godly soul. And know that that's the way you're built. You're built to be a geula thing, a thing of redemption. And it's redemption, meaning transformation of darkness into light. When you redeem something, you cash it in for something else, right? I'm redeeming my soda bottles, right? Cashing them in for a nickel. So I'm redeeming all this negativity. And I have the power to do it. The power of geula is within each and every one of us. And to the extent that we multiply that times 1 billion people, however, on the earth, that brings a complete redemption, a complete cashing in and turning around of negativity into godliness. Okay, I'm going to cash in all my soda bottles. That's my bechein for today.
Avi, I have a question that really doesn't have an answer, but I mean, I just
Love it.
there's a fundraising campaign going on right now for a 4-year-old that's been diagnosed with a really, really horrific disease that isn't even treatable here. And they're going to try and travel and to try and find this poor 4-year-old treatment. I mean, you read the story. I've seen the family at the hospital, and it's just hard to maintain that level of amuna when you see children. I mean, this is the third or fourth child now, fourth, I know, that are going through treatments for this,
Yeah.
and it's hard to maintain that level of, geula when you see these kids suffering.
Yes. Well, you preface by saying it has no answer.
Right.
I mean, that's what the Alter Rebbe asks. Why did he do this, right? Why did he put us in with all this makmotzai and all this struggle? Well, we know the purpose. He told us the purpose, but we do also know that there are just some situations where it seems impossible to do it. But yet there are other situations where having the knowledge that this is what we're supposed to do, we can do it. So, in those, the big ones are, in my mind, remaining big ones.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to offer anything in that regard?
I mean, I do know it's,
Mm-hmm.
you see the little cheseds in the, sometimes where the way things are done.
Right.
The kindnesses, that we're seeing along the way.
And sometimes you see the big miracles where situations like that, miraculous, that you described, do miraculously resolve. Sometimes you see that, but oftentimes you don't, and you wonder, why did it have to end this way if really Hashem wants, light to shine? Why does it appear to be so dark? Okay.
Wow.
Let's move on. Well, just know that I guess one thing I said, there's also pick your battles if you can. Sometimes Hashem picks battles for us and they seem overwhelming, and sometimes they do overwhelm us. But at least in the battles that are manageable, use the powers that we're speaking about here to manage them and transform them.
I also want to offer that other people's hardships are harder to bear. Think at times like this, I think we should remember our own hardships and how we look back in retrospect in our own life and things that we went through. And what we know about our own life is that everything we went through is for our own benefit. We can't say that about another person. We can't say that, just not possible.
Good.
But yeah.
Okay, guys.
Good
Shabbos.
Good Shabbos. Say refuahs and Yeshuas for everybody.
Amen.
Amen.
Good
Thank
Shabbos.
you.
Shabbos.
Bye-bye.